everyone to VTAEYC's presentation of Advancing Early Childhood Education as a Profession in Vermont. And this is our third presentation of this, and it's been just so exciting and well received, and we've loved the feedback and the comments and all that everyone that has participated has shared. So we hope that you'll join in and to different opportunities where you'll have a chance to chime in with some thoughts from the field, and we've even got a little secret project for you at the end that we'll share a little bit more about. And so I want to just take a moment to welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy lives. We wanted to make sure we offered an evening session because we do recognize that many people are still working, and they're on those front lines serving children each and every day, and we so greatly appreciate that and recognize you. And it's just important that we all take a moment and think about these uncertain times and how challenging it is for everybody, and just be thankful that you were able to fit it into your schedule to be here. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Rachel Hunter. I am the the outreach coordinator, for VTAEYC Advancing as a Profession. I've been in the early childhood field for a little over 20 years. I had a family child care program for many years, was a Starting Points leader, member of BBF. I was a mentor with Vermont Birth to 5, and I now also do some consulting work with Let's Grow Kids as a community program outreach support specialist. And one of the things we're doing is sharing fun facts about ourselves. So I hate to admit it, I am a leftover 80s hair band groupie, and I was supposed to see Motley Crue and Poison and Def Leppard this summer, and I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think they're putting 65,000 people in a stadium. So I'm hoping that they'll reschedule for next summer like some other tours are, but there's my fun fact. I'd like to also have the other presenters here introduce themselves. So I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Goodwin. I'm the Executive Director of Pine Forest Children's Center in Burlington. We're a nonprofit, and I have worked at Pine Forest for 16 years, and I've fulfilled every role there possible, aside from formerly being an infant teacher. I've been a toddler teacher, a preschool teacher. I've moonlighted as the chef 2 different times. And I was the assistant director, and now I'm the director, and my kids have benefited from Pine Forest. So it's been nice to have that experience of being a teacher, but now also being a parent, and sort of, it brings teaching into a whole new light. Let's see, my fun fact, I always get so nervous about this one. I'm not an 80s hairband kid. I was born in the 80s. Let's see, I have not owned a bike since I was in high school. My mom sold it to a neighborhood kid when I went away to college and didn't tell me. And so for Mother's Day, I got a bike, and I have since been riding bikes with my 2 kids who are 4 and 7. And I feel like I could start a blog called The Adventures of Riding Bikes, because every time, never fails, something happens. I took them out this afternoon to enjoy sunshine before this, and my son's pedal fell off and I could not get it back on. So I now apparently need a mom bag on my bike that has a toolkit, Band-Aids, and who knows what else. So that's my fun fact for today. Oh, and I will introduce you to Kim Freeman.
Hey everyone, I'm Kim Freeman. Sorry, my old lady voice is perking up there. So I've been working in the early childhood education field for over 30 years. Wore many hats: teacher, lead teacher, director, family child care for many years. I'm currently the education and HR coordinator for early education services in Brattleboro. And like Christina, I sit on the task force, the VTAEYC task force, for advancing the early childhood education profession. And my fun fact, so the past 2 times I was able to say, I'm going to be a grandma in September. And today I actually get to announce that I'm going to have a granddaughter. It's a girl. So that's my fun fact, and I'm really excited to be here with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Christina and Kim. I also want to make sure to state that Maria Richards is also on the call with us, and she's helping us with some technical pieces and reminding me to unmute myself and, you know, all those little glitches that come up. And Maria's here on behalf of Let's Grow Kids and their generous support for this project. I wanted to take a moment to just go over some of the features on a webinar platform for those of you that may not have been able to be on here before. So with the webinar platform, we can't hear you, you're automatically muted and your camera is off. Then we do have an option later on where you'll see a feature to raise hands. That'll be near the end. And at that point, we'll manually unmute you, but until then, you'll stay muted. You'll also see in your, I'll call it a taskbar, that you have a Q&A feature. So if you have any questions, go ahead and click on that and it'll send a notification to us that you have a question. And we'll also use that feature later. There's the chat box, and we'd really like to use the chat more for if you have any type of technical problems, or if you're not able to use the Q&A feature, use that. But when we extract out the data and save all your information, because we really want to have your thoughts to drive this project forward, it comes out easier out of the Q&A feature. Another important thing is this is a 2-hour training recognized by Northern Lights, so everyone will receive professional development credit. We do need to ask you to please stay on for the full time. The way this platform works is when you log on, it has an automatic timer, and when we finish, it has a report that is generated and sent to Northern Lights. And so in order for you to get the full credit for this, you need to stay on. Otherwise, unfortunately, they won't be able to offer PD hours. And also, at the end of the session, there's going to be a survey that pops up that's going to have an opportunity for you to click on there and note if you need a certificate, a professional development certificate, and also opportunity for a follow-up conversation if you'd like to ask some questions, learn a little bit more in a smaller group. So make sure you stay on, and that'll automatically pop right up as a tab on your screen. So let's take a look at what our agenda is for tonight. We're going to start out the beginning with a video that's kind of going to give you a synopsis of the whole project and kind of sets the stage for the conversation tonight. Then we're going to talk about fragmentation and defining a profession, because those can be really confusing topics. So we are going to spend a little time on that and help you understand those abstract conversations. Then we're going to look at, from the Vermont perspective, the Advancing as a Profession project, chapter 1 that took place last year. Then the national work that's been happening with Power to the Profession and where that's at right now. And they've been working 4 to 5 years on their project now. And back to Vermont, Advancing as a Profession, where we are right now in chapter 2. And then the little extra work we have for you is you're going to be writing your own elevator pitches. But don't stress, we'll walk you through that and explain what's happening there. We also want to just acknowledge that normally when we have these conversations, we're able to talk to you and ask your insight, and we are so excited to have so many signups. So it's really inspiring to see that so many folks from the field want to learn more about this. And typically we're able to ask for your opinion and gain thoughts. So we have built in a few different pieces tonight to make that possible, but it's not as, the structure isn't the same if you've had the opportunity to participate before. So tonight we're hoping that by the end of the session, you'll be able to define what a profession is. You'll also be able to describe NAEYC's Power to the Profession. And if we get too caught up in using acronyms and early childhood jargon, don't hesitate. Go ahead and put something in the chat and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. We're going to also describe VTAEYC's Advancing as a Profession. We're going to help you learn to identify the different parts of a full-fledged profession, and also ways that you can remain connected to this work and learn more about what's going on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out with a poll. Normally, when we have these types of presentations, we're able to see each other and we can talk to you and we can see what's happening, and we can look at your facial expressions and we can laugh together. But tonight, I can only see Christina and Kim. And although they're lovely to look at. So we're going to take a quick poll, and we would love to know what roles you are in the field, what your setting is, where you're working, type of thing, and some multiple, or you'll see when it pops up. And then how many years you've been in the field. And collectively, when we were introducing ourselves, I was, wow, we have over 60 years just here. We'd love to hear what you all have. This is always so exciting because our first session, it was almost like everybody was kind of even. And last time we had a large amount of people that were in attendance that had more than 33 years in the field, and that was so inspiring. Also, I just want to make sure you don't miss the feature that the poll does scroll down. There are more options for role in the field. And I know a couple folks had missed that in the past. Hi, Anne. Anne's got a question. I don't, I'll answer it live. She's wondering on the answer in the field of early childhood education or in the early childhood in general. Go ahead and answer your role, Anne. You probably fit into other, because if I'm thinking you're the assessor at STARS. This is my first time fielding all the questions by myself, so we'll hope that I don't advance us in the wrong direction. Oh, look at this great responses. Less than 4 years in the field, 12%. Welcome to the early childhood field. We are so excited to have you. 5 to 10%, or 5 to 10 years seems to be our high number tonight with 23%. I love all these numbers. And in the field, more than 33 years, 9%. Yay. And then let's take a look at our roles in the field. Looks like tonight we've got a lot of teachers, 53%. That's awesome. You know, as we do this project, we really try to be very intentional that we connect with all the different settings and all the different positions. And so when we're tracking this information, we will actually intentionally go, we haven't connected with a lot of lead teachers. We need to be thoughtful about how to bring them to the table and get their perspective. Or, we haven't had a lot of family childcare providers. So this is great to see these numbers. Thank you everyone for answering. I wish we had time to add that all up. That would be a lot of years of experience that we're bringing here tonight. So as I mentioned, we've got a little activity for you later on. Here's just a sampling of what we're going to be doing. We are going to be creating an elevator pitch together. Well, you'll really be doing it, and I'll be playing some cute music. So something just to keep in the back of your head as you're watching a couple videos and listening to the presentation, what pops out at you? You know, you're in the elevator, you just got on at the penthouse, you're riding all the way down in this luxury glitz and glamour hotel, shiny elevator, and someone hops on midway down and they say, well, what do you do? What would you say? What would your answer be? So just something, keep some little nuggets and be thinking about what is advancing the profession and why would anyone care? So we're going to start out with this video that Katie Titterton, our communications person, put together. And I just have to tell you, I think it's absolutely amazing. And she is so talented with these just beautiful images of children engaging and staff. And she just really did such a nice job laying out the project in a way that's really easy to hear and digest. We'll get it started here.
Advancing early childhood education as a recognized profession in Vermont. First of all, what is a profession? According to research by early childhood education leader and author Stacy Goffin, a profession has 1. A well-defined, distinct purpose, 2, specialized knowledge and skills, and 3, systems and structures for preparation, accountable practice, and field-wide leadership. You may already consider yourself a professional. You may be excellent at what you do, but early childhood education is a fragmented field. Advancing as a recognized profession leads to clarity and cohesion in the field, community understanding and respect, better preparation for public and private investment, and opportunity for better compensation. Advancing as a profession takes time. Here in Vermont, we've been building toward this for years. In 2018 and 2019, the Vermont Association for the Education of Young Children, or Vermont AEYC, launched Chapter 1 of a workforce engagement project asking early childhood educators across the state, what is the will to advance as a recognized profession? Overwhelming support prompted Vermont AEYC to continue the work. Vermont AEYC is now in Chapter 2 of our workforce-led initiative to advance early childhood education as a recognized profession. We are building on what we learned in Chapter 1. That includes our workforce motto for this project, do nothing about us without us. With that in mind, this project is structured to be led by a diverse representation of the workforce and inclusive of all voices within the workforce. Vermont's initiative is structured to be workforce-led. A task force is made up of members who represent the roles, settings, and regions of Vermont's early childhood education workforce. The task force leads the effort to discuss recommendations and writes discussion drafts to present to the workforce for feedback. Regional facilitators hold conversations throughout the state to gather members of the workforce in groups to talk about the task force's recommendations. Members of the early childhood education workforce read the task force's discussion drafts, host and attend regional conversations, and complete surveys as we go through each step. The ongoing participation of the workforce is critical to the accuracy and success of this project. A resource team of funders, leaders of stakeholder agencies, organizations and networks, and consultants makes sure the initiative to advance has the funding it needs to succeed and is reaching all possible stakeholders. Vermont AEYC is an affiliate of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, or NAEYC. At the national level, NAEYC's Power to the Profession initiative is a national collaboration to define the early childhood profession by establishing a unifying framework for career pathways, knowledge, and competencies, qualifications, standards, and compensation. So, we start with the Power to the Profession framework. The goal of Vermont's task force is to answer, to what extent might Vermont's early childhood education workforce choose to align with this national framework? The task force studies each piece of the framework. After deliberation, they create a discussion draft to present to the Vermont workforce. The workforce discusses the draft in facilitated regional conversations and offers feedback through surveys. The task force incorporates this workforce feedback into a consensus document and begins with the next piece of the framework. As a state affiliate of NAEYC, Vermont AEYC's initiative can provide valuable feedback to national leaders while taking steps to eliminate fragmentation, increase cohesion, and advance early childhood education as a recognized profession in Vermont.
I just absolutely love that video. I could watch that so many times. And we do have another one by Katie coming up later on in this presentation. So I am going to work on getting us back to our PowerPoint, and I'm going to turn this over to Kim so she can begin sharing information with you about fragmentation and what a profession is.
So that really gave us a wonderful overview of really what we're going to be unpacking and looking a little more deeply at this evening. I'm gonna bring us back, and if you had some key words to take from this training, fragmentation would be one of those key words. And so, as it says, advancing as a profession is an abstract concept. What does that really mean to us? Or for us? And to really back up, we had to look at the fragmentation that exists within the field. Currently we are under-resourced, we have inconsistent quality, and we have lack of public will. And I'm going to begin this next session with a little example of what my very first email address was. Back in the early 90s, my email address was notasitter@hotmail.com. And so what I want you to think about for a moment are all the different roles, names, titles that early childhood educators are referred to or called. And I'm going to ask you to list those out in the question and answer box. So there's the chat for the technical stuff, question and answer for just putting out there, what do you refer to yourself as? What have you been referred to as? Like I said, I was not a sitter. So I'll give you just a moment to populate that, and we'll see what we can come up with here. It's fun to see the different names. Glorified babysitters, yes. Just watch the kids all day. Teacher, caregiver, glorified babysitter, childcare worker, caregiver teacher. I'm an early childhood educator, but I know that we are called minders, child minders, nannies, and babysitters. That's actually a new one for me. I had never heard that one. That's pretty interesting. Called babysitter, I want to be called a teacher. Educator, teacher, daycare worker, awakened. On another webinar we had people writing, hey, hey you, caregiver, daycare, brain architects. Oh, I like that one. That would have been, maybe my email could have been, call me a brain architect at hotmail.com. I like that. Daycare provider. Someone who just has fun all day. Yeah, I know. Just because we can have fun, we're not necessarily taken seriously. Educator, caretaker, someone who just has fun. Many don't think of us as educators. Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to stop reading there because I think that gives us a pretty good sense of the different titles that we're referred to. And it's no wonder, when you think of all that, it's no wonder that policymakers are confused, right? Even when we take away the less nice titles, even if we got rid of, babysitter, and we just looked at childcare provider or teacher or lead teacher, anyone taking that information before our policymakers, they don't know what people are talking about and what people do. Studies show that the early childhood education field is not perceived as a cohesive professional workforce. And what does that mean? It means that the field is viewed as fragmented and poorly prepared. It doesn't mean that you are poorly prepared or doing a poor job, not at all. It really just means that it's the unfortunate view of those looking at us on a, from a national level. So next slide, please. All right, so let's look at the different fragments within the system. We already addressed the different names, many descriptions of what we do, and we could see that in the question and answer bar, whether it was just watching the kids or having fun all day, to architecting, developing the architecture of the brain. There are many different programs: Head Start, Montessori, Waldorf, family childcare, in many different settings, in home, in centers, in public schools, a wide range of practices and traditions. It's not saying that wide range of practices and traditions isn't a good thing. It's just saying it can get confusing for people. And then think about the funding sources, right? Federal, state, tuition from families' pockets, lack of funding sources. And then think about the diverse agencies that are involved. Just in Vermont, we have the Child Development Division, the Agency of Education. We have STARS with their opinions. We have the Bright Future Information System, BBF. I know for me, I also have Head Start, and as a NAEYC accredited site, we have NAEYC. So there's a lot of different agencies and stakeholders that are kind of guiding the work that we do, which provides us with different kinds of policies, different regulations, and even different incentives. Next slide, please. So what are the consequences, right? People could say, well, this is the way it's always been. Why do we even care? Well, there's really serious consequences. We have uneven quality of care for children and education. What one child might get from a family who has a significant amount of money may be completely different from someone who can only afford to get what they can get. There's a lot of confusion for families too. I think back when I was a family child care provider, I provided services from infants into school age, and I had a family come to me really concerned because their child was turning 3, and they had this understanding that they were going to have to remove their child from my care and my program and put them into preschool. And they're like, what preschool should I go to? I don't know what to do. And they were actually really relieved when I said, they can stay here with me. I can provide the same services for you, and we can have that continuity of the relationship through a longer period of time. So families are confused. They don't know what it is we're doing and who does what. Again, access and equity issues. Educator expertise is not known or valued. How many people out in the general community would actually think of us as brain architects, right? So you're not truly understanding the importance of what we do. Funding gaps, we know that for generations, early childhood educators have been footing the bill, either by taking low wages or purchasing supplies out of their own pockets. Whatever it is, the gaps are huge. And then because we can't, or we haven't come together as a cohesive profession, we have lack of public will and investment. No one's going to invest money in something that doesn't really seem organized or cohesive. Next slide, please. So in the video, it talked real briefly about what a profession is. Now, I just want to start by saying, back when Rachel came down from her home space and came and visited me at my workplace, and she told us that we actually weren't a profession, I was a little taken back and not really impressed, and was kind of thinking, why did I even invite her to come? What is she talking about? Of course we're professionals. Well, this isn't my hobby. I've made a life of this. What are you saying to me, Rachel? But Rachel was able to help me and my colleagues understand that we may behave professionally and we may see ourselves and take ourselves seriously. A profession is actually a little bit different. And so as you can see here, it's well-defined and has a distinct purpose. It has specialized knowledge and skills, and it has a systemic structure for all of the following: preparation, accountable practice, and field-wide leadership. Now I'm going to unpack that a little bit more in this next slide. We're going to compare it to the the nursing profession. Rachel, you want to change the slide? So this is also a concept that it's taken me a little bit to wrap my head around, because I'm not very familiar with the different levels of those working in the nursing field. But there is this idea that if you are familiar with them, you can walk into a hospital and you can know by someone's title, whether it's LNA, RN, LPN, what their role is, and they have a clearly defined identity. So in that well-defined and distinct purpose, the nursing field has that. It's very clear. Specialized knowledge and skills. Again, in my ignorance, I may be in a hospital with a beloved family member wanting answers, and a wonderful, warm, caring person comes in and I start rattling off questions and they can't answer them. And it's really easy to feel like, what do you mean you can't answer? You're here, you must have this knowledge. But in reality, they know what their specialized knowledge is, they know what their skills are, and someone else will answer the questions that maybe they wasn't in their jurisdiction or their skill set to answer. So, and they have, different licenses that require different education and allow for different practices. The systemic structure for all of the following. So no matter where you are trained to be a nurse, you're going to get the same training and be able to do the same skills, the same work. There is a licensure for people in the nursing profession. If you mess up, you might lose your license. That makes one accountable to their field. And then the last one there, the field-wide leadership. Well, what I found out while learning to do this, gathering information to do this training, was that there's actually 23 states that have this agreement where, okay, if we train and you're licensed in Vermont, you can go and be a nurse in some other state without jumping through hoops. When I think about, I'm hiring here on the Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts border, and we have an assortment of people who are coming with a variety of educational backgrounds and trying to make sense of it. Oh, well, no, actually in Massachusetts you need this, but in Vermont we need to have that. And it gets really confusing. So another piece here is that it's leadership from the field. It's not top down, people around a table smoking cigars, making decisions based on, their gut instinct. It's actually people who are in the field helping to inform the field. All right, next slide, please. And so I'm going to pass this on to Christina, who's going to give you a little more information about Chapter 1.
Perfect. Thanks, Kim. So in September of 2018, a group formed to start discussing what we're now calling Vermont's Chapter 1. And that was it was about a 9-month project. The goal overall was to hear from a critical mass of early childhood educators from the workforce. And we wanted to literally hear from everyone. We wanted everyone who participated. The goal was to have everyone feel heard, and by not only the facilitators who are leading the conversations, but also by project leaders and by each other. And so we really used a very clear format with which to do that, called a facilitated conversation with intent. It feels like a very heavy title for something that actually really beautifully scaffolds a conversation around making sure that all voices are heard and that there's clear consensus and data with which we can use to move forward. So we really wanted to have authentic engagement. And for me, something that has stuck with me since the beginning, and I started on this project my second day as the executive director at Pine Forest. And so the thing that stuck with me, and it was around the time when new licensing regulations were coming out. Anyway, I'm going to tell you what it is. The thing that really stuck out for me is the phrase, do nothing about us without us. And so the beauty of this project has really been hearing from people across all settings and years in the field and roles in early childhood education to really hear what this profession needs to move forward. So the goal was to hear from teachers, teaching assistants and associates, center directors, assistant directors, family child care providers, public school teachers, Head Start teachers, Waldorf teachers, all kinds of different philosophies. We wanted to hear from community-based, school-based, home-based. We didn't really want to hear too much from stakeholders. We really wanted this to be, again, about all of us. The goal at the beginning, so in September of 2018, was to hear from 1,000 early childhood educators. And in the end, we ended up hearing from about 740, which was 12% of the ECE workforce in Vermont, but it was also a critical mass. We held 58 conversations across the state and found that we achieved a nice balance, right? We heard from lots of roles, settings, years of experience, and even educational levels. So the important part to remember too is when we started out with this, we didn't know the answers. So we went into this really wanting to hear from the field to know, is there initiative and drive to keep going with this project, and what is the interest level of the field? Beep. That's my cue to Rachel to change my slide. Like when you're reading a book to kids that are, or kids are listening to audiobooks and it beeps to turn the page. So thanks, Rachel. So the second goal of our project was, so first goal was to sort of engage a critical mass. The second goal was to sort of build awareness and hear all perspectives across the field. So we wanted to know why this work was important. We wanted to share a little bit about what Kim just shared about what is a profession. And then we wanted to share what the National Power to the Profession movement has been. And in order to do that, we had a really clear structure for these conversations. They're about 2 hours long, and conversations are always built on a script. So if I'm leading a conversation, or Rachel's leading one, or Kim, that we're pretty much saying the same thing. We use a PowerPoint at the beginning, and then the conversation is scaffolded in a way that we ask the same questions to every participant, so that hopefully all 730 participants heard a pretty similar presentation that allowed us to really have good core data. So the conversation from intent after the presentation about what is a profession and what is the National Power to the Profession asked 2 important questions. The great part for me is, if you don't know me, I tend to love to talk. My brain is running on rapid fire all the time. So like when an idea comes, I have to say it or it gets clouded over by everything else running. So this has been a really good moment for me to use facilitated conversations. We actually just used one yesterday at our staff meeting to talk about reopening, and it was actually a beautiful way to scaffold the conversation. So we asked everybody what excites you about having early child be recognized as a profession, and then what worries you. And everyone would go around in a circle. So the facilitator sort of presents the question to the group, and then one person chooses to go first, and we go around, and everyone has a chance to speak. There's no time limit in how long you can speak. And the beauty of it is you do sometimes have to sit in silence. Again, hard for me, but it's also a great moment for everyone to sort of process what they heard and really think about it. And it allows us to really gather hard data from participants. Hold on, I have to move to the next page of my notes so that I don't let my brain of rapid fire take over. So what I found as a facilitator and a participant in Chapter 1's conversations was that ability to really hear what other people were thinking and feeling, to hear what was exciting them and what was worrying them, but to also just learn so much about the field. So while we were able to sort of get a wide array of participants in this Chapter 1 phase, we also learned a lot about each other. Vermont is a very small state, but even though we're small, there are so many things that are beautiful and wonderful happening in our fragmented process already that it made us really motivated to keep going with this. After participants were part of a conversation, there was always an opportunity to follow up. Do you have any clarifying questions? Did someone say something that you'd like to go back to? Just to make sure that the conversation wrapped up with minimal confusion. And then at the end, there was a follow-up survey that asked participants to sort of reflect on what course of action do you support? which were, you know, not keep going or yes, keep going. This is so exciting. Yeah, I think that's good. Beep. So our third goal was to gauge the will of the workforce, and that survey really allowed us to do that. It answered the question really clearly. As you can see, 72% of respondents said that they wanted to continue to learn more and to be part of advancing as a recognized profession. 72%, that's huge. 24% were like, I like aspects of this, but I'm not all aboard the STEAM train. And then 4% were sort of like, do nothing, wait and see. It was really clear that we had a will from the workforce to keep going with this process. And that was enough to drive us to chapter 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But first, we're gonna move on to a video that Katie Titterton made. The video is sort of comprised of what chapter 1 looked like. It contains quotes from participant surveys about what they were feeling about. And as you're gonna see throughout the presentation, building a bridge is sort of a theme to help us visualize what this movement is all about. My challenge to you is while you're watching the video, see if there's anything that inspires you. Are there any words, any quotes that inspire you, any components to moving on as a profession that really speak to who you are as an early childhood educator? So that's my challenge to you while you're watching this video. Thanks, Rachel. Thought that music was really drivey today. I don't know why. Yeah, so while I was watching the video, things that came to me were sort of that this is now like a really, like we're in this weird pandemic, like reopening time. And it feels like this is really a good call to action. I think we're getting attention, whether we maybe want it or not, around what the early ed field does in Vermont and then nationwide. And so I think it's a real call to action for the field to start advocating more for the value of our profession. I think P2P sort of encapsulates my whole journey as a director. And so I really feel motivated to keep this work going. I think about all the teachers that are at Pine Forest and what being a recognized profession, what impact that could have on them. And that we should really continue to honor the work that NECE's done, but also honoring the work that we can all do as a state to make this really nothing about us without us, right? Like that's the whole premise of this work, is that it's an opportunity for us to make decisions about our field because we are the experts in early childhood education. Soapbox, stepping down, handing it over to Rachel Hunter.
Thank you, Christina. I'm trying to laugh and cough at the same time. Goodness. I've watched this video so many times, and the thing that always comes back to me is I had the honor of being a facilitator during chapter 1, and it was just so great going out and having conversations with so many folks in the field. And one of the things that I heard over and over again was, thank you for coming out. Thank you for coming in person and asking us our thoughts and opinions. And one of the biggest takeaways I had was I was sitting in a group of all Head Start folks, and I was asking them, what excites you? What concerns you? And over and over and over again, they said what concerned them was worrying about family child care providers and what did this mean for them? And then later on, I was in a group of center-based programs, and they said, well, what would this mean for programs like Head Start or Waldorf? And same thing with the family child care. Everybody was worried about everybody else. And that was just so rewarding to think about, how unified our field is. And even though we have fragmentation, everyone really does care about each other. So that was really just an uplifting moment over and over again. So we're going to move on to another poll. Normally, we'd be sitting with you and we could see your facial expressions and we could see if you had this glazed over look like, what are these people even talking about? But we can't do this. So I'd like to ask you to just let us know if you've had the opportunity to participate in a conversation with intent yet, and how much do you already know about Power to the Profession? So Maria's going to pop a poll up here for us. If you just take a second and answer, that would be great.
I have that music from the video stuck in my head right now. I feel like we need it as like a Jeopardy interlude while people are answering the poll.
I had to mute for a second because we have a puppy and he just went out. And of course, while it's my turn to talk, he's burp, 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 burp. So I'm texting one of my kids, please go get the puppy. I'm telling you, it never fails.
Yeah.
Now, this is another piece that's really exciting. Last session, we had like a 50-50, I think it was, of people who had been involved and people who hadn't. And I will say that because this is so abstract, hearing it over and over again, I feel like I take something away each time we talk about this, and I have another like, oh, aha moment. It's just such a complex process and project, but it's also so exciting. Oh, great. Thank you for all the great responses. So a 45-55 split, that's pretty good. I'm really excited about that. So for all the ones that haven't participated before, this is a really good opportunity because as Christina had explained, when we went out in chapter 1 and we presented this information, we didn't have anywhere near this amount of time to really dig in and talk slowly and answer questions. We just had to go right through it. And this is really nice that the bright spot out of this COVID-19 crisis is we're able to bring this to much slower paced. And we had been planning to do a professional development rollout, but it was not slated at this time. It was for in the future. So we're excited to be able to be here now. And then how familiar do you feel with Power to the Profession? I like that we have somewhat familiar, 39%, very familiar, 9%. And then we've got a combined 53% that know a little bit about it and don't know what it is. And that is not uncommon. That's the national movement. And so if you're not a member of NAEYC or you somehow didn't get on the right email thread or the right Facebook feed, this may not have come across to you yet. So I'm going to turn this over to Kim to share a little bit more about what Power to the Profession is.
All right, so I'm excited to be here to talk a little bit with you about Power to the Profession. When I first saw that I was going to be doing this particular slide, I was very excited because what Rachel didn't know when she assigned it to me is that I love analogies. And so when I saw that big swirling storm, I just was wild with excitement of how I could actually help you to really understand what our urgent need is. I'm kind of a closet weather girl, and so it was really fun to think about fragmentation in terms of a perfect storm. So if we were in my weather center, I would have the nice map behind me, and I would be saying things like, folks, we have a big storm brewing, and the consequences are already visible on the ground. From the south, we have inconsistent quality of early care and education, and a western front brings with it inequitable early childhood educator wages, and a northern high pressure system makes early care and education pretty much unaffordable to families. Now, all of this has clashed with a hot air system that sits right above Washington, D.C. And so if you can think about that swirling storm above our country for many, many, many years with the fragmentation and inconsistent quality and all those things. So this storm has been over us for countless years. And in 2017, in the eye of the storm, it was realized there is an urgent need to advance as a unified profession. Now I pick the eye of the storm because in the eye of the storm, all of a sudden the storm kind of stops and you can have a moment to actually think, okay, there's more of this coming. What can we possibly do so that we can survive? And so there we are in the eye of the storm, and it is there that Power to the Profession was born. So I want you to picture this. I want you to picture the swirling hurricane of a storm, torrential downpours, thunder booming, lightning's crashing, and then in a moment of clarity, the rain stops and the thunder rolls away and the clouds part and the stream of light comes in and touches the ground and oh, like the angels are singing. Next slide, please. We have the audacious vision. Now I'm going to read this slowly. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to feel it with me. Each and every child, beginning at birth, has the opportunity to benefit from high quality early childhood education delivered by an effective, diverse, well-prepared, and well-compensated workforce across all states and all settings. Woo, just let that sit in there for a minute. That's huge, isn't it? It's really the heart of the work that we have been doing. Whether you came on board yesterday or you've been here for, 50 years, it's the heart of what we want to be doing. But how? How on earth can we do this? So I was lucky enough in 2017 actually to be attending a training. I think I was in Austin, Texas, with Stacy Goffin. And I thought I was going to go to a training that was going to tell me how to advance the early childhood profession. So I was there, I was going to take my notes, I was going to go back and figure out how we were going to advance this field. What I didn't realize was that I was about to engage in a conversation of intent. And that conversation of intent was Stacy Goffin gathering data for the field and for Power to the Profession to build this audacious vision. And she said to us, oh, imagine it's 2025 and money is no option, no problem, whatever the phrase is for that. Don't worry about the money. What would it look like? And people just blurted out all the different things they think it would be. And she scribbled down notes and we moved around the room and we did a whole bunch of different things. And I left thinking, well, she didn't teach me anything. But it's really exciting to see that work, across the nation helped build this audacious vision. And so Power to the Profession was born. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Power to the Profession. So next slide, please. So Power to the Profession is a national task force with 15 national organizations, one of them being NAEYC. The other 14, I am sure that you would recognize if you started down the list. Many of them, birth to 5, on and on. Now, again, what I love about this is that it's not cigar smoking people sitting at a table making brash ideas and decisions about what they think we need. They were driven to get engagement from the field from the get-go. It's always engagement from the field, and it's looking at early childhood educators as the expert, because we're the experts. We know. Those of you who spend every day with a child in your lap or classrooms of children in your hearts, you know what is needed to make a system that is going to be the best possible system for children, families, and the workforce. They developed some decision cycle components, and I'll talk briefly about those in a little bit. But what's really cool here is that they would deliberate, and then they would send it out to the field to get feedback. Bring it in, deliberate a little bit more. We need a little bit more feedback. And they would keep going back and forth until they really felt that they had the best that they could have to then create consensus. They also were looking at resources, structures, and supports. We aren't looking, Power to the Profession was not looking at fixing a broken system. It is looking at creating a new and more intentional system. What I also really love, it's honoring the existing and future workforce. So, I know when I first heard about it, I felt a little angst, like, well, what does that mean? Where do I fit? What about my coworkers? Does this just mean everyone has to have a master's degree and we can't do anything? But really they want to honor the people that have put years and years and years of their love and dedication into the field to be able to find a way to support them being in the field, and also creating a really clear and cohesive pathway for the future workforce. And that maybe there'll be future workforce that is like chomping at the bit to come join us. So I love that piece. And lastly, creating that bridge to the future system. And every time I see bridge in the quotes there, I visualize when I was a kid, and you find a little brook or a stream, and you want to make a bridge. So you go out into the junk pile or whatever, and you pull a big board over and you flop it over the stream. And if you're like me, you feel it really brave at first until you get out in the middle of that board and it's tippy and it's wobbly and you just kind of freeze up and think, what am I doing? Oh, and then people in the back are like, go, Kim, go, you got to get up, go, go. And people on the other side are like, come on, Kim, you can do it, you can do it. That's actually not the kind of bridge that this refers to. This really refers to a bridge that is clearly thought out, that has secure footings, that is strong, that is reinforced, that has handrails for people of all ages and abilities to get across, and also that it's a choice. You can choose to walk across this bridge, or you can choose not to. No one's gonna drag you over or yell from, if you get halfway across, they're not gonna yell, Kim, just go, just go. So that is kind of the crux of Power to the Profession. And what I love is that it feels like it comes from a place of support and intentionality that only early childhood educators would really be able to pull off. Next slide, please. So, as I said, Power to the Profession, they've done their work and they have now created the unifying framework. Now, I'm gonna probably say this a couple times. This unifying framework is their suggestion. This is what they are putting out to the field based on information they got from the field. So I'm going to just run through these very quickly, and then I'm going to unpack them in the next slide as we start talking about and getting closer to the work that we're doing in Vermont. So the unifying framework offers recommendations in four key areas. A clearly defined profession with distinct roles and responsibilities. Aligned professional preparation, pathways, and licensure. Professional compensation, and a supportive infrastructure and shared accountability. So on the next slide, I'm going to unpack these a little bit more for you. So these are the 6 components that the task force has taken from that unified framework. So you're going to see there, it says one distinct profession. So that's where we define, or where we're defining who we are and what we are responsible for. So that anyone walking into an early childhood program, right, much like a hospital, can understand what is it we're doing, what are the different skill sets that we need to have, what is the value of our work. 3 designations. Now, when you first look at that, you think, oh, I want to go to Hawaii. If we can only choose 3 designations, I'm going to Hawaii. No, sorry. 3 designations actually means 3 levels. So just like in the nursing field, and they have, the LNA and LPN and RN, what NAEYC is suggesting is that we have 3 levels, and they would be referred to as ECE1, ECE2, and ECE3. So that's what we mean by 3 designations, and each, of course, with their own skill set and responsibilities. Aligned professional pathways. So what that means is that higher ed programs would be consistent in the training of early childhood educators, and that training would be stackable and really evident. If you start at an ECE1 with a CDA, how do I get to be a ECE3 at a bachelor or master's level? So of course, ECE2 is associate's level. So having that really clear and stackable, so it isn't navigating a maze as much as it's just really clear. I don't know how many of you have been in higher ed or have kids going off to college, but ooh, you can't get there from here. So we want to make that so it's not hard, and and it actually allows for equity. It shouldn't be based on, oh, I can't afford to now take this class that I need because I've transferred to this school. People should be able to come into the field and access their professional training. Now, professional compensation is a fun one. Quite frankly, it's where I immediately go to because I'm not getting any younger. And I imagine many people are thinking, why do I want to do all these things if I can make more money at all these? So what Power to the Profession is suggesting is that compensation be compared to that of those in the public education system. So if someone has an associate's level of education, their rate of pay could be comparable to someone working in an elementary school who has an associate's degree. What's really beautiful about this, and it's, you know, I think one of the most unfair pieces that has happened over time is that if you're an infant teacher, your value seems to be lower if you're working with babies. But if you're a kindergarten teacher, ooh, you can get paid bigger money because, gee, you're a kindergarten teacher. And what Power to the Profession is suggesting is that it doesn't matter. It's an even playing field. If you're working with babies, if you're working with toddlers, preschoolers, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, if you have the education and the competencies that you need, you would be paid similarly. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if there was anything else I wanted to say about that, but I think that that's in a nutshell pretty well it. And necessary supports and resources and infrastructure, we can't do this alone. And that's a really important piece. And we have to have buy-in from all the other people that are out there who are offering suggestions, guidance, or rules and regulations as to how we do our job. But we need to make sure that we have pieces in place so that that bridge isn't rickety, so that we don't get out in the middle of the bridge and freeze up. And then the increased public financing, of course, is enormous, right? The first thing people say is, oh, if I'm making the salary of a school teacher, who's paying my wages? You know, we do not want that on the backs of families. What we want is increased public financing so that it is attainable for all of us, for the people getting the programs we're providing and for us doing the work. So when you look at this, you'll see it says Power to the Profession, interconnected components. You can't pick one. Like as a task force member, I couldn't just go in and say, let's figure out professional compensation. We'll get that all wrapped up and we'll be good and everything else will fall into place. We really can't do that without looking at other components. So I'm going to ask you just to take a moment because again, you know, like Rachel said, can't see you. I don't know if you've glazed over. You probably had your dinner early and you're settling in and who knows, maybe Netflix is on and you're watching your favorite show. So what we're going to ask you to do so that we know we still have a live crowd out there is pick two of these components that you see as being interconnected. For example, I would look at the 3 designations and I would say, can't really wrap that baby up without looking at aligned professional pathways. So please enter in the question and answer bar some that you believe are interconnected. And I'll just wait a few moments. I always hear the Jeopardy music during these things. Now you're looking and you're thinking, one distinct profession, what might that be connected to? Oh, I'm seeing some stuff come in the chat. Oh, professional compensation and increased public financing, without a doubt. Supports and resources and increased funding, yep. Professional compensation and increased funding. Well, I know you guys, I know where all your minds are. Professional compensation and increased public financing. 3 designations and professional compensation. Exactly. All right, professional compensation, necessary supports, and 1 distinct profession. Yeah, 3 designations and aligned professional pathways, distinct profession and compensation. I would say the professional compensation is deeply connected with both designations. Yeah, definitely. And professional compensation supports. Yeah, I think you guys have, I think you get it. As you can see, we still have a lot of work going ahead of us. I hope that I have helped to unpack Power to the Professions work. I'm just going to bring your attention to this next screen because there's a really important element that we can't forget, and that is of shared accountability. We're asking a lot, and we're willing to do a lot, right? We're basically saying, if we come together as a profession, as an acknowledged profession, we are now asking you, the public, for some things too. And we expect that you're going to hold us accountable. We are saying we are going to do X, Y, and Z. And we understand that we're going to be accountable, and that's going to be what helps you want to spend your money on us. So let's look at this. As a profession, we welcome increased, clear, consistent professional accountability that's aligned with our definitions of professional competencies and which results in increased compensation. So if you look down at that lower right corner, there's a really fun little diagram that kind of looks like a California highway. And so you can see where it said professional accountability, there's the orange circle. So in that orange circle, it says professional accountability. And now you can see, right? Look at this interconnectability as well. We understand that we can only expect significant public financing needed to move the profession forward if we're willing to be accountable for its effective use. We know, right? Of all the funders that are out there right now, no one gives us a buy. They don't just say, yeah, have fun, do it. No, there's accountability. Usually it's in the form of data and reports, but that's just part of what funders are going to be looking for anyways. At the same time, we also understand, so the little blue circle, that we can only be held accountable if we have necessary sufficient supports, resources, and infrastructure. It has to be a two-way street or a 3-lane highway, an interconnecting 3-lane highway. So I just want to remind you that, yeah, we're asking for a lot, but we're also, when we're coming together and saying, yes, we want to be a profession, that we are acknowledging and honoring the accountability that we will also need to be responsible for. And now I am going to pass.
Kim, you muted yourself early.
I think what she's saying is that she's passing the baton to me. I feel like we're playing Ellen's Game of Games and everyone has to wear headphones and read each other's lips. I think that's the answer. Thanks, Kim. So, I'm going to talk next about Chapter 2, which is what we had sort of entered into pre-COVID-19. So Chapter 2 was motivated and moved along based on the resounding commitment from the field from Chapter 1. And by this point, we had NECE's Power to the Profession unifying framework to really give us a lot of supports in order to move forward with this work. So first, the who that was part of this next phase was really unpacking NECE's recommendations and looking at how those recommendations for Power to the Profession could apply to Vermont. We are well aware that we are much smaller than like California, for example, and that in order to make this nothing about us without us. We really needed to make sure that we could apply this to the systems in Vermont and also the field in Vermont, because we have a very different view on early childhood education. We wanted to keep a commitment to the field. Chapter 2 still has a very clear focus about this project being workforce led, building a shared awareness, and offering a platform for advocacy for our profession. The WHO, as part of this chapter 2, has been the task force, which Kim and Rachel and I are on. And the task force is made up of 15 members from across our fabulous state, from all different sectors of early childhood education. And it's been really an empowering experience to be part of that collective voice during our meetings and during our now Zoom call meetings. It's been really exciting to have that sort of interconnectedness to sort of unpack all of this information. The goal too was that when facilitators were going out in the field, we were still using the same facilitated conversation format. It worked really well for gathering data for chapter 1, and we really wanted to continue having clear data coming in terms of how the field was feeling about our first component, which has been professional identity, was the first part we brought out to statewide educators. Regional facilitators, Kim and I have both acted in that role, and there are several others statewide who have helped to carry out conversations. And again, regional facilitators come from all areas of the field. And the goal still with facilitated conversations has been to reach a variety of settings, a variety of years of experience, education, philosophies, all of that, just to make sure that we're still getting a very wide collective voice. VTAEYC, or as I like to say it, VTAEYC, is the contain. I don't know. I just feel like it just needs a little more pizzazz. So Vermont AEYC is the container for this work. So if in 2 weeks you're like, I wonder what's going on with Power to the Profession, if you go to the VTAEYC website, you can clearly stay up to date. And there's going to be, spoiler alert, a lot more stuff coming in the next few weeks that as things sort of start to gain momentum. So how are we doing all of this? We took all the recommendations from chapter 1. It's important to realize that we still don't have all the answers, unfortunately, and yay, we get to make those answers. So it's important to know that we are sort of not starting with a blank sheet of paper. I don't know if any of you in any of your early childhood settings ever do this, but at Pine Forest, we can have like a whole 2-hour conversation and be like, what did we decide? So it's been really great because we are so passionate about this field. It's been really helpful to have a framework to sort of pick and choose from. The national task force has sort of done a lot of the nitty-gritty details and a lot of the work, and now we get to take that work and start to think about how it's applicable to the state of Vermont and the early childhood field in Vermont. Sorry, I just lost my spot on my notes. Yep, I'm gonna move to my next page. Hold on a second. Suspense. What is she gonna say next? I think I'm gonna say that you can go to the next slide. Beep. So again, these are the interconnected components that Kim was talking about. In this first part of chapter 2, we put out one distinct profession. As a task force member, the conversations around distinct profession were very honest and thoughtful. There was a lot of critical thinking around how do we define such a fragmented profession into one cohesive statement and name. So I think we all sort of walked in the first day not really sure what was going to come out of it, and then in the end being like, whoa. Like, we did not all agree from the first hour. We had a lot of really intense but meaningful conversations to sort of unpack what all of that looked like. In the end, we agreed to a consensus and made a recommendation that we wanted to put out to the field that would then be a component to our next round of facilitated conversations. And that came out as a discussion draft. So Susan Titterton sort of wrote up what the committee or the task force had come up with, and that was what we presented to the field. when we took this document out into the field, we were really eager to hear from others about what you all thought and felt about the name of the field, the name of the profession, the roles and the responsibilities. And we felt resounding support for the content and heard a lot of really thoughtful responses. Nobody was sort of like, nope, not happening, I don't like it. People were like, oh, I do like it. But again, as what Rachel was saying, people were like, well, what about this portion of our field? How are they represented in the roles and responsibilities? Or I really like that you use this, but I'm not sure that word belongs in that part of that role and responsibility. So it was really empowering, and I think it was empowering for other people. It started to get the gears turning from that initial conversation in chapter 1 about what is a profession, and it started to get the gears turning to empower everyone to be like, oh, we can really do this. Like, we can really become the early childhood education field in Vermont. And so the hope too is that it's starting to also create a unified voice for advocacy around some of these other components, for increased public financing, for aligning our professional pathways in, you know, accessing necessary supports and resources in order to keep this ball rolling. I think it's important to remember when we look at the interconnected components, sorry, it's getting late, I'm starting to lose vocabulary. The interconnected components, it's important to remember that like everyone on this call right now is such an integral part of how we frame this for Vermont. Like, you shouldn't be like, oh, whatever, that I'll get the next conversation. No, you are all really integral to how these 6 components are going to fit together and how they're going to interact and what they're going to mean for the field so that everyone can cross Kim's bridge. So remember, nothing about us without us. Beep. So chapter 2, this is sort of outlining our process, like how this all unfolded for the state, is that the task force studied a component. So the first part was our professional identity. Through our conversation that first day, we created a discussion draft, which we then took out to the workforce with conversations with intent. Those started happening from December 2019 until the beginning of March of 2020. And then obviously we sort of had a halt because those conversations were happening in person and we were all very respectful of the stay home, stay safe. So sort of that's how this idea of Zooming came to be. But the goal was to have about 750 conversations, and we got about halfway in that process before we had to take an obvious necessary pause. The goal is still to talk to a diverse array of people, and we still are using a workforce survey after those conversations with intent to really glean ideas and feedback from the field and those participants to understand more about what they thought and felt and want. So because we didn't quite reach our goal, we still met as a task force at that midway point to sort of study the feedback. We were able to read as a task force all of the comments, the suggestions, the concerns, the excitement from field-wide participants. And we were able to take that information and make a consensus document, which was shared. You know, time blurs together in this time frame. I'm pretty sure it's a Tuesday, but I believe it was all shared out last week what the task force consensus document around professional identity was for the field. Does that mean it's set in stone? No, because as we were talking about, there's 6 really big blocks that are all interconnected. So we might get to resources and be like, oh no, we need to go back and fix that part about professional identity so that they align. It's literally like we haven't learned like, yeah, check, we're moving on. It's sort of like the box is there, we think we're done, but we're not quite ready to like set it in stone and say that's the end. This is definitely like an emergent curriculum. It's ever evolving, and as new things come out or become sort of bubble up to the surface, we know that we might have to go back and make other revisions. Beep. So from the initial data we were able to gather, we feel like we had a pretty good consensus from the field from that first chunk of conversations. 90% of the respondents to the professional survey agreed with being called, that like I would be called an early childhood educator. Kim would be an early childhood educator, and that the field would be called early childhood education. There was resounding support for that. This was one area where people were kind of like, but what about the SLP that comes to visit the children in the preschool? We're not saying that she's any less. We're just trying to start to chip away at defining who we are to reduce that fragmentation. And I think this component is also aptly timed because we're also moving into a period where we can do more advocacy for ourselves as a profession. And so I think it's important to think about, as we're starting to communicate for reopening or advocating for things we need, to start using things like, I'm an early childhood educator in Burlington and I'm looking for these supports. It's going to take time, right? How much time does it take to create a habit? Like 20 to 30 days or 20 to 30 repeats. It's going to take time for all of us to start practicing now using early childhood educator in the early childhood education field to really see it start to gain momentum and make an impact. So it's not only aptly timed, but it's also important that this was the first, so that when we do get to increased funding, supports, and just supports and resources, people have sort of started to hear a little bit about who we are and what we represent. Sorry, that was a long-winded one for that one bullet, but in that first document, there was also a whole component to roles and responsibilities that sort of outlined what does it mean to be an early childhood educator in the early childhood education field. We did take comments back from the field from our facilitated conversations and made revisions to that original document. So the one that was published last week does show some changes due to feedback from the field. Age range, NAEYC had put birth to age 8, which is about 3rd grade, and that's what, like, my teaching license is in birth to grade 3. And so we really wanted to start to emulate that as a hope to decrease some of the fragmentation. We also heard, I heard, at least in a conversation with home providers in Chittenden County, that a lot of them take children for after school care. And so those children are just as much a part of their program as the infants. And so we just really wanted to be respectful of that whole array of what we in the state of Vermont deem as early childhood ed. Yeah. And I am going to hand this back to Rachel. Oh, wait, no, wait, I'm not going to hand it back yet. Don't unmute yourself. You can if you want to. But the next part we're going to, as the task force, is we've started to move on to talking about the 3 designations. So we might not be able to meet in person, but through Zoom, we have started to talk a little bit about, we've wrapped up professional identity in part. And so now we're wanting to move forward with the 3 professional designations. So now you can talk.
Thank you, Christina. We do have a lot of fun, just so you know. You probably picked up on that. I have to share a little snippet. I have the honor of sitting in on the task force meetings, and it's just amazing to watch these women who actually didn't even know each other. I think maybe 1 or 2 knew someone else, but for the most part, they were complete strangers. And watching them come together and build relationships and advocate so positively for what they believe in. One of the pieces that came out of professional identity, they really advocated and they wanted certain changes made from what came out of the Power to the Profession recommendations. And they worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And one particular word, I think, was an hour and a half of going round and round of what they thought and everything. And then the exciting piece was this then went out to the field with the facilitators to ask the field, what do you think? And, the field was like, I don't know if I like that. Oh, we like a lot of this, but these couple changes make us a little uncomfortable. So part of my job was to collate all that, bring it back and share it with the task force. And it was such an interesting process to watch them advocate for these changes, then to read through from what the field said from the 34 conversations we had up until COVID-19, and then to watch them actually retract and respect 100% what the field had to say and retract all that they stood on for those hours that day of saying, we want this. So it's a really cool process, and it really and truly is field driven, without question. So we're going to move on to a question time period. If you have some questions, we've got a few minutes. You can populate them into the Q&A box. I've been taking a couple notes while Christina and Kim were sharing things, so I'm going to answer a couple questions that are in here already. One comes from Sue. She says, if we're not a valued profession, why does CDC have guidelines that are so intense in order to keep other people's children safe at this time? Well, that is a really good point. We are valued. The unfortunate piece is we are not a fully recognized profession. We do not have all of those components like the accountability, the professional identity, the specialized scopes and skills, all those pieces. And that's really where it comes down to the public will. And even though everyone is doing their absolute best in you know, working as a professional, putting their best foot forward, unfortunately, the entire system we're working within is not cohesive and structured. Let's see, we have another one here from Danielle. She says, do you anticipate that your conversations with intent will have a different tone post-COVID? Will people feel differently after being very obviously so essential during this time? You know, our approach going out is going to be exactly the same. We're going to go back out with the 3 designation information, likely over Zoom. I think it's going to be a while before we can pull any groups together, and we certainly don't want anyone to feel unsafe or uncomfortable. So we'll continue with that conversation with intent structure of asking, what do you feel? What excites you? What worries you? Looking for consensus. But I do have a feeling that people have realized how critical their role is. And I think the numbers alone by the people that have been signing up for these webinars that are filled within a couple days really shows that folks are now paying attention, and they're realizing that they could have a voice at this table and really impact some change at this critical time. So I do think it's going to feel a little different, but same structure. Let's see. Pamela has a question. How will Northern Lights Career Ladder line up with the 3 designations, ECE 1, 2, and 3? We haven't gotten to that section yet. Susan Titterton, the project coordinator, did a very brief, quick review of the career ladder in Vermont, which has 6 levels, and then the national recommendation is 3. The great thing about this is we don't have to completely align with the recommendations. The charge of Chapter 2 is to determine how might Vermont align, and we may end up coming back and saying we think there should be an ECE 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe it's a 1A, a 1B. We don't know. We haven't gotten to that part yet, but be sure to join us at the table when we come out for your input so you can share what you're thinking. See, I think we have time for maybe 1 to 2 more. Anne is asking, are different states choosing different terminology? Would you please talk more about choosing from the menu? So different states may be choosing different terminology. Vermont is aligning their terminology with the national work. The power to the profession, they began looking at this just about 5 years ago. And they have a task force, and their structure is very much well, our structure, I should say, is in alignment with theirs. We really thought the most effective piece would be to parallel their work and then look at what they had and bring it to our field. Now, they originally started out using a term you might have caught Kim reference called decision cycles. And so we did begin our work using the term decision cycles. And if you were part of the Chapter 2 conversation, we came out and asked you, what was your opinion about decision cycle 1? And that was name, roles and identity, who's in the field and who's in the profession. Well, while we were in the midst of doing that, Power to the Profession finished looking at all 8 decision cycles, and they moved on and created the unifying framework. Well, we really deliberated over that. What do we want to do? Do we want to stay in the decision cycle mode, or do we want to advance to where they already are in their consensus documents? So we chose to advance forward. So we do try to align with that language. So you won't hear us referencing decision cycles any longer. And those were those bricks in the block that both Kim and Christina referenced. They're now the interconnected components. And looks like Anne has one more question. Have all states chosen early childhood education? There are, you know, a lot of different states are looking at this work. They there's a lot that really are. There's probably Vermont is looking at it the most in depth, and definitely Vermont is engaging the most population of the early childhood field and aligning with the power to the profession system. But I can't speak to what others have come to determination. I think you'll remember in that video it said something about low-hanging fruit, and I do think that they're going to align with that name from kind of what I'm hearing, and it's going to get into the more meatier things as we travel through the different sections. So I don't want to burn up all of our time, and we will get back to you with answers to all these questions. What we do is we take all of this out of the Q&A, and Maria is amazing and puts it in spreadsheets that unfortunately I email a lot about and say, how do I move this and how do I do this? But she'll get it to us. So I'm going to move us on to another awesome, inspiring video that came out of Power to Professions Unifying Framework. And I think as you're watching this, you might catch a few nuggets, because don't forget, there's that elevator pitch coming up. Kim's going to tell us a little bit about that after this. So you might find a few things in here that might help you say, well, what is this? Why is it important? Who's involved? How does it work? Let's see if I can get this. Oops. It's always a challenge. I had to move my bar.
I'm in.
I'm in. I'm in. I'm in. I'm in for the unifying framework for the early childhood education profession.
The Unifying Framework is the result of Power to the Profession, a multi-year, profession-led initiative to define the early childhood education profession.
It sets the vision that each and every child, beginning at birth,
has the opportunity to benefit from high quality
early childhood education,
delivered by an effective, diverse,
well-prepared,
and well compensated workforce
across all states and settings. For too long, early childhood educators have not had the recognition or investments they need to best serve children and families.
And this lack of investment
has led to an underprepared,
under-resourced,
and inequitable workforce.
We can't keep meeting higher quality standards
and completing degrees
while still earning poverty-level wages at the end.
It's time for change.
It's time for change.
It's time for change.
Time for change.
So 15 of our national organizations came together,
and with extensive engagement,
For more than 11,000 early childhood educators.
In higher education faculty like me,
reached consensus on some core recommendations
to advance our early childhood education profession.
and I'm in.
I am excited to have a unified framework to advocate for compensation
based on our complex, skilled, and valuable work.
I'm ready to be part of a profession that embraces the science of early learning
and the importance of developmentally appropriate practice.
As a faculty member, I can tell you we need this kind of clarity and consistency about the competencies and skills our graduates need to best support children and families.
As someone working in state systems, I can tell you we need this too. We can do this.
We can do this.
Lo podemos lograr.
We can do this.
Let's build the bridge together
toward the unified early childhood education profession.
All of us need.
All of us need.
all of us need.
I'm in.
I'm in.
We're in.
Estoy en apoyo.
We're in.
You're muted, Rachel, but I think you meant to go, woo!
Can you hear me? I meant to say I'm in. Okay, I am
I
going to
think
work
I'm
on,
going to try out for Ellen's game of games. I'm getting really good at this.
I see that. I'm going to work on getting us back to our slideshow and turning this over to Kim to take us to our next piece.
So who wants to build a bridge? You! You know, before we go to this last piece, I just want to ask, how many of you have driven up and down I-91 where there's bridge work? Takes a long time to build a bridge, doesn't it? And the bridge work that we've had done on 91, they didn't just patch stuff on it, right? They tore that bridge down and they built a brand new one, and it took a lot of time. So this is really exciting work, and we need many hands to build this bridge, but it will take a lot of time too. So spreading the word, elevator pitch. This is really fun. It's where we get to see if you have been listening to us or if you actually just binge watched a couple shows. So elevator pitch is really quick, really brief, and you're just hitting the high notes. So one more visualization with me, all right? So let's pretend VTAEYC has flown you out on an all expense paid Power to the Profession conference in Hawaii, woo! And you're at a big fancy hotel. Everything's glossy and glittery, and there's people dressed up wearing high heels all over the place because they always are. There's a lot of different conferences going on, but you're there for a Power to the Profession conference. And you're at the elevator doors because you're gonna run up to your room to get a sweater because it's actually really cold in the conference rooms. And so like every other conference, you forgot to bring a sweater down with you and you need to go back up. The glossy doors open up, you step in, and just as you press the button for floor 28, someone says to you, "What on earth is advancing the early childhood profession?" Well, you now have 28 floors on a high-speed elevator to hit the high notes, to make them interested, to make them want to know more, and to tell them what Power to the Profession and advancing the field of early childhood education is all about. So I'm going to invite you on that question and answer bar. And if you can't use question and answer, you can only use chat. We can certainly use chat. We can look at chat too. But please enter in your elevator pitch. Now, the fun part is that Rachel's going to provide for you some really fun elevator music. So you're going to have the time of the elevator music to draft out your elevator pitch. And when the music ends, please start entering it into the question and answer bar. Hit it, Rachel. right? If this was musical chairs, you would all be scrambling to the last chair in the room. But instead, we're lucky enough that it's elevator pitch time. So this is also the exciting time that you will have an opportunity to raise your hand if you would like, and you can read your elevator pitch out loud. So anyone who is interested in reading their elevator pitch, please raise your hand in the raise hand bar. And as we see them coming up, we will call on you. In the meantime, I can start reading a couple of these that have come up. It's making a difference. It's seeing children's first of many things and growing and working together. Thank you, Julie.
I have one if you want, from Danielle. Advancing the field of early childhood education is an initiative to get infant, toddler, and preschool teachers the support, funding, and educational opportunities to best serve the youngest population of Americans during the years that are most important to their development, years that set the tone for their entire lives of learning. This is important work, and it is currently very undervalued in our country. We're going to change that.
Yeah.
Go, Danielle.
Yeah, I think you got that done in 28 floors too.
Yeah.
I see another one here. It's about recognizing the work that teachers do in childcare. We are not just playing with kids all day. 0 to 5 is when children learn the most. It is how they are molded. We are the second most important people in their lives. Nice.
Here's one from Siobhan. Advancing the profession is crucial for building a bridge from here to the future for early childhood education professionals, as well as for our young students. These advances set the stage for early childhood educators to garner respect from our communities, increase educational opportunities for teachers, and become a unified face that is prepared for action when federal funding is introduced. Nailed it.
Nice. I'm not seeing anyone raising their hands though.
We do have one. It looks like Sherry has raised her hand, so I'm just gonna go ahead and Sherry, if you want to unmute, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So what I wrote, oh my gosh, if I can find it, here I am. So what my elevator pitch would be is we are early childhood educators who are coming together to unify and advocate becoming a profession, to have educational levels in the profession such as associate's, bachelor's, and master's degree, to bring the profession to a professional level that shows just how important our contribution is to early childhood development.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome.
Let's see. I'm looking at another one here. In order to better society's future, we need to dedicate time and resources to early childhood education. Early childhood professionals are one of the most underpaid and undervalued professions, yet we're raising our youth, which is a vital role that deserves attention and respect. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for spending that time thinking about your elevator speech. Practice it, practice it, practice it, because it's important to get the word out. You're out there in the communities. If someone says to you, what is this? You can tell them. You know, though we're not engaging families and stakeholders in this task force work, it's still really vital that everyone around us hear about it, so that they're not coming up against it fresh when we roll it all out. So, and if you're in network meetings or anywhere you go, please use your elevator speech. And I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you, Kim. I received an email this morning. Well, it actually went to Sonia and then got looped back to me, and it was really inspiring. We had a session last week on the 13th. I wish I knew what day that was. Maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was somewhere definitely last week. And excuse me, the participant, or the person that sent the email, had been in the training, and she was so thankful for everything that had been shared and for the fact that we had the time to slow down and go in deeper. And she said her favorite thing was writing her elevator pitch, and she has already been out trying it out and sharing it with folks. So I was like, that's awesome. So thank you for sharing your elevator pitches. Who knows, maybe the next session that you're on, there'll be a video that Katie puts together and you'll see your words going across the screen. We save everything that you type into these boxes, and then Maria helps me get it into those spreadsheets I referenced, and then we collate it out into some documents so we can reflect on it later on. So closing, I want to make sure to give you some information about how you can stay involved and how you can learn more, and also to remind you when the session ends, there will be a survey that pops up. It's just going to be another tab right at the top of your screen, and so you'll be able to complete it. It's really, really short. But before that, make sure you go to the VTAEYC website and sign up for receiving their newsletters. So much of our project work comes out in those newsletters, and there'll be lists of future conversations, and we will be working on a professional development session 2, and that's really going to dig in a lot deeper to the unifying framework and what that looks like. And if you're interested in seeing the full unifying framework document, be sure to check out the National Power to the Profession.org website. That website was just launched a couple months ago after the unifying framework document came out. So it's really new and exciting. The other thing is the VTAEYC website is getting a facelift right now, and I think Christina might have referenced that, or Kim. And there's some pictures up there of the task force members. I think they're up now, and I'm sure you're going to recognize somebody because there is a representative out of each region in the state. And there's also the consensus draft for decision cycle 1 there, so you can see what came out of all those conversations and the recommendations. And there's some blog posts, and there's just a lot of great stuff. And there's also a link to a YouTube channel where these videos are that you get to see today. So if you'd like to take a look at them or share them with a colleague or staff members, you'll be able to access them there. And so again, if you see something coming up or an invitation to a conversation, another session, be sure to join us. And as a reminder, part of this survey is an opportunity to join us for a follow-up conversation that will take place at the beginning of June. And that's going to be able to dig in a little more to what we talked about today. And you'll have an opportunity to actually be on the regular Zoom platform where we can see each other face to face, ask questions, talk it through, and even extend our learning more. So just another reminder that PD session number 2 is coming out this summer, and that's going to be really fun and exciting to share. And we also will have those follow-up conversations. And at the close of this, just a reminder, we'll have a report. It'll be sent to Northern Lights. Your PD hours will automatically be added to your BFIS account, and if you're in need of a certificate, just check that box on the exit survey and I will get one out to you in a few days. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Kim, Christina, and Maria. And I hope you guys have an awesome night, and we'll see you soon. Take care.